Welcome to Alt Perspective. My name is Tim. As always, I am joined by Christy, our pastoral presence, my
Oh my
mother.
gosh.
She holds many titles,
Many titles.
reluctantly holds many titles. Um,
Mother, wife, friend.
she's all the above.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us, as always. This week, we're going to have an actual fun episode. Get away from all the heaviness of this insane, evil world and
Amen to
talking
that.
about a movie graphically depicting the crucifixion.
What an extreme
Yeah.
difference, right? From
Yeah.
that's the pendulum swings from one
Yeah.
side to the other side. Way
So yeah, we're
further.
actually gonna talk about something fun this week. A new show came out called The Promised Land. It's a YouTube show. It's a real TV show, but they opted to put it out for free on YouTube rather than put it on a streaming service, which I think is a really cool move. Um, it is so everyone has access to it. So if you haven't watched it, go check it out. Then come back to this podcast because this is going to be a spoiler heavy podcast. I don't know how you can talk about this show without being spoilers. That being said, if you are a well read, literate Christ follower, you should know the story. So I don't know how many spoilers are actually there, other than just the character interactions and things like that. Um, so yeah, The Promised Land. It just came out last week, premiered last week, episode 1 and 2. Episode 1 has been out for a year now. They put it out as kind of a tester, see how people feel about it, take notes to proceed with the rest of the season. But episode 2 premiered last week, and they're now in the midst of dropping season 1. We're going to do every other week. We're going to check back in with the show. If mom is down, we'll talk about that. And we're going to hopefully cover the whole season. We'll see. I think her tone has shifted a little bit on it, but yeah, we'll see. So it is a comedy series based off of right now we're at the end of Exodus, I think, in terms of chronologically, biblically. So it picks up 40 days after the parting of the Red Sea, after the Exodus from Egypt. And it's kind of the start of the wandering. Well, not quite the start of the wandering, but it's right before they get to Mount Sinai. It's a whole thing. So it's basically the show is based off of the story of Moses from the parting of the Red Sea to. I'm assuming it sounds like their plan is to go about 4 or 5 seasons, and they're planning on going through Deuteronomy from what they've
Okay.
laid out. So, yeah, essentially just the story of Moses, the laws, all that stuff. And it's a comedy, which is very refreshing and interesting for it's an interesting concept. I guess I would say, like, in terms of most people see, and you sort of dealt with this, which I want to get your
I
perspective
did,
on this.
yes.
Most people see the Bible as sacred, as something not to be made light of. We take it very seriously. So I can see how a lot of Christians might struggle with this concept of making a sitcom, not a traditional sitcom either, but like a workplace comedy based on things like The Office and Parks and Rec and the later ones like Abbott Elementary, things like that. And so it's an interesting concept, but what the workplace comedy does is it is very character focused and very character interaction focused, which I think works. That style of comedy works for this type of story. But I want to start with getting our high level thoughts. I want to start with you though first, Mom, because you had some very interesting initial reactions to the show.
Yeah.
And then as you slept on it, you kind of shifted. So I want to get into
did.
that. I want to get into that. Like, so let's start with your high level thoughts on the show. Where are you at now? And then maybe kind of go back, or however you want to talk about it, I guess. What are your high level thoughts on the show? What are we thinking?
Oh my. So now what's happened, and maybe we'll start with the moment. The moment is I actually found myself wanting to rewatch it Because what I did was I found myself after I had gone to bed kind of tense,
Yeah.
right? Like, not sure what to do with all this. And and the next I went to bed thinking about it and cracking smiles and just kind of my thoughts going back to different scenes
Yeah.
in the promised land. And by morning time and midway through day, I would found myself laughing. Like literally having moments where I would see it in my visualize it and I would
Mm.
start to laugh, which was different for me because I've never been a fan necessarily of this kind of comedy.
Mm.
And I've always gotten bored by it. And in fact, the first episode, I was a little bit like, "Oh, this is moving a little slow.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can do this." And I even stopped when I was watching it and I called Tim and I said, "Tim, seriously? Seriously? I don't think I can do this, you know?" I
Yeah.
it was like one of those things and he's like, "Well, I thought maybe." And I said, "But all right, I'll give it a chance. I'll go ahead and watch at least through the second episode." And and so I pushed through the first episode because it was a little push through for me. That's just my honest opinion. It was
Mm.
not that it was bad, because it wasn't. It was just I don't even it almost appeared to me like they were trying to figure out where they
Yeah.
were going with it.
Mm.
And I don't know that they were, but I don't know, maybe it was to leave us a little bit in suspense of what's gonna happen with this. I'm not sure if there was a
Yeah.
reason for the way it was written, the first one, but it wasn't bad. It was just like, "Can I do this? Can I sit through this?" And I would crack smiles through the first one and some of the stuff that happened, but it was just so slow for me. But then when we jumped into the second one, that's when my heart began to go, "Oh," and I found myself smiling, but not laughing. And then I found myself really sitting there kind of tense through it all. I don't
Mm.
know. And this is what I explained to, it's like, Lord, and I would pause it here and I would sit there and I didn't realize what it was until after I gotten through and really started to look back and the scenes and I'm like laughing and I'm like, should I be laughing? Should I not be laughing?
Yeah.
Should I be enjoying this? Is this funny? And it's funny, but it's not blasphemous. So how did they do so I found myself really kind
Mm.
of processing through the humor kind of on my own time, almost in scenes,
Yeah.
and processing through it, going through it and saying, "This was okay." And so by the time I really had thought through and and I'm laughing at it after replaying it in my brain, mind you, I'm not even watching it at this point.
Yeah.
Replaying it in my brain, I'm finding myself more relaxed. My arms aren't tense. I'm not tight. And I started thinking about this. And so I started thinking about this is because of the generation I'm from,
Mm.
for me. And I was raised in this strict Christian home. And I was raised with this everything is, and it is holy. Everything is
Mhm.
holy in the word
Yeah,
of God.
absolutely.
And it's the scriptures and you don't mess with it, you don't play with it. It's just it is. And so read it as it and take it seriously. And so I didn't realize how much I was still a product of my environment and how
Mm.
I grew up until I had to process through. It was kind of like when the Lord broke religion off my life.
Yeah.
Kind of felt like he was taking it just a little bit step further, say, you know what, you can enjoy me. You can
Yeah.
You can laugh. You can smile. I have a sense of humor.
Yeah.
And you know what? This isn't blasphemous. It's okay. And you know what? It's actually kind of refreshing
Yeah.
to be able to sit and watch something about the word that doesn't completely take it out of context. I don't think. I think it kind of really stuck with a real good biblical
Mhm.
strength foundation there. I don't think they like totally shook the foundation of the scriptures. I don't like they think they really took everything out of context or twisted anything in
Yeah.
there. I think they really stuck. They were pretty firm with actually what happened, but it was just this viewpoint, such a refreshing, you know what, lighten up and live. It kind of that's what it reminded me. It was just lighten up. Let's live a little bit. Let's
Mm.
see and look at this from a perspective as of, you know what, I can see me in their shoes, doing and
Yeah.
reacting this way,
Yeah.
responding this way, cracking jokes this way. Um, so it kind of became like this. It was a real journey for me
Mm.
from then and even till now, because the funny thing, I guess the oversight of it is I have found myself up and even till this morning thinking about different scenes,
Mm.
and and it just kind of boosts my makes me smile.
Yeah.
And I think we all need a little bit of pure just joy and
Yeah.
just things that make us smile, help us to be lifted out of the everyday heaviness. And I think this is one of those shows that I'm very pleased to say, I guess, that I think this has the potential to be a very positive thing for the Christian. And I think it actually could end up being a very positive thing and affecting people that maybe aren't believers
Mhm.
for the positive.
Yeah. I would have to agree with almost everything you said. As far as the effect of the show, I think it's going to be very positive. As far as what we can tell, obviously we're 2 episodes in, 3 episodes now. The
Yeah.
third one just dropped. Um, and moving forward, it'll be interesting to see how they deal with some of the more serious subject matter. I
Serious
think we
things. That
kind of
that
get,
is curious.
I think we get kind of a hint of it in episode 2, and we'll get there. But um, I think the workplace comedy was a good move. Like, it wouldn't work if this was like a Friends style sitcom or a Boy Meets World style sitcom where it's like, it's like a stage setting and like people are coming in.
Right.
I don't think like where the jokes are deliberately written out, and this more improv style, this more natural flowing style of comedy where you find the comedy in the character interactions and the way other characters react to other characters, or like
Yeah.
it's not necessarily like cracking jokes, except for Aaron, we'll get there too. But like, I think the natural interaction of the characters and having the comedy be character driven, as it often is in these workplace comedies, rather than joke driven, I think
Yeah.
was a good move, and I think it sets the tone for the show. Because that's what I've always liked about these workplace comedies. That's why I've always liked The Office and Parks and Rec, because they ask you to buy into the characters first, and the characters play naturally. And it's like, no, it's like with The Office. I've known a Dwight in my office space. I've known a Michael Scott. I've known these characters in
Yeah.
real life. So it makes the show grounded and it makes it feel natural. And I've reacted to that type of person in my workplace. So when you take that into the biblical setting of Exodus and you're dealing with these, quite frankly, kind of silly situations, if we're being honest,
Right.
I think it really works. I think it plays well. And we'll get into more details and stuff about that. But yeah, I think the workplace comedy style was a really good move for this show specifically. And
Tim, in just to interrupt you for a minute, I
Yeah.
was just as you're speaking, I'm thinking, that could be the very thing that kept it from being blasphemous.
yeah, because it
'Cause if
feels
you
natural.
did because it's a natural thing, it's how we would naturally any human would naturally
Yeah.
respond to these situations. And you're not cracking jokes. It's not
Yeah.
"Oh, I'm making fun of, I'm not cracking a joke." It's more, "This is just life, and this is funny."
Yeah.
Because this is how every normal or most normal human beings
They find the
would
humor. Yeah.
possibly respond. Yeah.
Yeah, we find the
what kept it from
humor in
being
the
blasphemous.
natural. We find that's
Mhm.
always been my type of sense of humor, is like you find the humor in character in people interactions. It's like
Yeah.
we laugh at ourselves. We're all self-deprecating on some level, some more than others. I'm a very self-deprecating guy. Like I'm usually the guy to laugh first at myself. Not like
Yeah.
in a joke that I said, but in like something I did.
Right.
I think
right.
back to like when I was on the youth van and I threw up because I got motion sick in the back of the van. And first instinct in me was, when did I eat hot dogs? I made the van laugh before they laughed
Yeah,
at me,
right.
and I think
Right.
that's our natural inclination as humans. So that's why I think this style of comedy works for
Right.
the Bible.
Mhm.
If you're going to do a biblically based comedy. Now, could you do a comedy on the Judges, or could you do a comedy about the gospel? Probably not. That would
Yeah.
probably be teetering on blasphemous, or you're trying to make light of very violent subject matter. Like I don't think
Right.
that would work. But I think the story of Moses and the Exodus and the 40 years of wandering, I think that's got enough mundanity and
Yeah.
like enough mundanity to it to where it's like, this is kind of a silly situation that we're finding ourselves in, isn't it?
Yeah.
And like also just the natural silliness of this group of people chosen by God for God to work through and be an example to the rest of the world, even in their deliverance, still constantly rebelling.
I know.
Like that's a funny,
Complaining,
yeah,
rebelling.
it's a ridiculous
I want to
concept.
go
So it's
back. I
like,
want to go back to Egypt.
so painting it in a natural human light,
Yeah.
I think works really well. And I think that's
Yeah.
where you find the comedy. It's not necessarily straight up joke telling or making light of or fun of, but it's in the just natural comedy that emits from that situation, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I have a few talking points. Is there anything else you want to say kind of just on our high level thoughts before we move forward?
Not really. You go ahead and I'll just
Okay.
wherever.
So overall, sounds like we both enjoyed the show on some level. Sounds like hopefully mom is at a point now, because at first she said that she was like, I don't think I could, we'll do episode 1 and 2, but I don't think I can move forward. It sounds like you might be at a point where you're willing to move forward with the rest of the
Yeah, I
season,
think
hopefully.
I'm actually intrigued. I
Okay.
think at this point now the curiosity has got me.
Okay.
So yeah,
Yeah.
so now it's like, you just told me episode 3 is out, so now I want to go watch episode 3
Yeah.
because I want to see how they handle Moses going up the mountain.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I think it's got me. I think I'm in.
Okay.
And unless things go really awry
Right. Yeah.
in their
Unless they
portrayal where I
completely
feel it goes
mishandle it.
against my conviction and they mishandle things, I believe I'm in it. And
Yeah, at
it's
this
gonna be
point, I
good.
think they're
So,
handling it really well. I don't think it's been mishandled. I think it's been handled with care. It's biblically grounded. It's not, you can tell that this show was made by believers who just enjoy this style of comedy.
yeah.
And we're clearly inspired by The Office. So yeah, I think it's good so far. So I got a few talking points.
I will say this.
Yeah.
I will say this for those that are sitting on the fence, sort of like, I don't know. I just don't know. I want to say this, that the thoughtfulness that the writers and the actors had to go through to get to the point that they're at and portray it the way they are
Mm-hmm.
and write it the way they did, it could not have been taken lightly.
Oh yeah.
I believe they really were thoughtful and mindful and respectful, because I haven't seen any mistakes made.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen them cross over, not even with a toe. To me, I mean, what I'm saying is I believe they're staying within the boundaries and respectful boundaries.
Yeah.
And so, so for those of you that might have been apprehensive, like, oh, absolutely not, this shouldn't even be.
Mm.
Don't judge before you give it a chance. Just go in with an open heart and open mind. That's what I tried to do, even though I was tense. And I think you'll be pleasantly surprised.
Mm.
Yeah, because I think they were really mindful and respectful and thoughtful in it. So now you can go
I
ahead.
also want to say, kind of before we dive into the actual details of the episodes, but like, and what we liked about them, what gleamed from them. Lots of chosen crossover here. Lots of cast members. A lot of the Pharisees are actually playing the main characters from so like a lot of the Pharisees that you see in The Chosen are like, one of them is Moses in the show, one of them is Aaron in the show. Like, I mean, they're like, there's a lot of chosen cast members, a lot of chosen alum in the show, which I think is really cool too. Just kind of seeing the shared, and I know there's been a lot of creative back and forth between the creators of The Chosen and the show as well.
Okay.
So just something, if you like The Chosen, I'm not saying you'll like this show for sure, but lots of chosen crossover here, which I think is really cool. So first episode, I think so we're introduced to Aaron first in the first episode. He's in the cold open joke here. If you're not familiar with the terminology, Mama, cold open is basically just the beginning before the credits.
Okay.
of each episode. Sometimes it has nothing to do with the episode
Okay.
proceeding. Sometimes it has everything to do with it. In this case, we see that this cold open really has nothing to do with the plot of the rest of the episode, but it's just kind of a funny. So cold open here I thought was really funny. You start with Aaron, and he points out Moses. He's up on the mountain. It's the battle between the Israelites and the Amalekites, and 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 Moses is holding up the staff to win the battle. And I just think the way they play with this scene, because this scene always read as silly to me in the Bible, to be honest. Like, I'm
Yeah.
like, what are we doing? Like, he's holding up the staff to win the battle. And you think about it when you're reading, and you're like, the practicality of holding up a staff for a battle length time.
Yeah. Right. Right.
And they play with that idea here. Like, Aaron,
Yeah.
he's like, he realizes Moses is struggling to hold the staff up, and it's really funny. Moses trying to hold the staff. He's like, and it cuts to an interview with Moses, and he's like, well, you see the staff, and you think, yeah, it shouldn't be a problem holding this up. And then he kind of side eyes the camera, and then it cuts to him like struggling to stay up. I think the joke lands, and I think it sets the tone for the rest of the show. I think it's like, okay,
Yeah.
this is what we can kind of expect from this. I thought it was a good cold open. What were your thoughts on that, Mom?
And that's where I first wasn't sure where they were going to go,
Yeah.
you know, because this kind of comedy again is new for me to for it to for me to watch because I've never been I tried watching The Office, and as you know, I was quite bored with it, so I never got into The Office, and I started watching the most recent one that you mentioned,
Abbott Elementary.
Abbott
Mm.
Elementary, and I watched a episode or 2 of that, and it was alright, but I never really embraced or got into any of this style of comedy,
Mm.
and so the cold open, it was like, "That's funny,"
Yeah.
but this is still my response. I'm just like I am right now. "Oh, that was kinda
Like your
funny."
brain is registering it as funny, but you feel like
Mhm.
you can't emit
Yeah,
the
it was
emotion.
like, should I laugh?
Yeah.
Should I admit the emotion? Should I admit that it's fun? So I was in this it was kind of almost like being in the midst of something you weren't expecting, and now how do I react? How do I respond to it?
Right.
Even though I knew and we had been talking about doing this, I thought I was prepared, but yet I got into it and I was like, I don't even know what to do here.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do. Maybe I should have prepared by watching The Office and forcing myself to watch The
Just
Office.
so you could
I don't know.
understand the comedy style.
Mhm.
Yeah. Um yeah, I that's interesting. So yeah, Mom's still apprehensive at this point, but like
Yeah,
yeah,
very
but
so
your
I got
brain,
it.
you were
Yeah.
registering the joke as funny, but you were like, I
Mhm.
don't know what I'm supposed to do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um okay. So after the cold open, we see the opening credits for the first time. I just had a little note on the opening credits. I thought it was a cool touch that the animation for the opening credits is the Book of Exodus. I mean,
Yeah.
it shows, you know, the plagues one by one throughout the credits, which I thought was a really cool touch. All the way up to the parting of the Red Sea, and then it pans up to the title screen, which I thought was a really cool little animation. Very
Creative. Yeah.
creative,
Yeah.
very cool. And then after the credits, we go into a tent where Moses is holding a meeting. You find out that he holds these meetings on the daily basis, which I thought was a really cool, like little play into the just the mundanity of life. Moses is a little lost in his role. He doesn't really know what he's supposed to be doing, so he kind of comes up with this concept that every day between certain hours he's going to hold a meeting with all the tribes in the tent, and they can each come in and air their grievances essentially. And he's got Miriam helping him out, his sister, because she's the only woman in the camp that can read and write. Which again, you're playing into the culture at the time. I think it's really fun. And there's a really funny dynamic here between Aaron, Moses, and Miriam, where Aaron's kind of playing the role of the spokesperson. Which, shout out, finally,
He
so-
gets his place.
finally, they have properly portrayed Aaron.
Aaron.
And you get even more of this in episode 2, which I'm super excited to get to. But like, they finally have portrayed Aaron as the guy. Like,
Right.
his rightful place, kind of guiding the situation. Love it. But there's a really funny little joke here between Moses, Miriam, and Aaron where there's a guy airing his grievances, and he brings up his pestilous foot, which is just infected. It blurs it out, which I think is a nice little touch. It's funny. Like you kind of see how they're going to handle violence in the show. Which tracks with workplace comedies. Whenever there's graphic scenes, they just kind of blur them out. And it works with the style of comedy. It's supposed to be a documentary crew, so you wouldn't show necessarily graphic things. And then Miriam kind of mumbles under her breath, "Why don't you try washing it?" And then Moses and Aaron are like, "Miriam," like, because she spoke up. She's a woman who spoke up. Like, so like they're and then the joke caps off by Moses going, "Maybe you should try washing it." And then he goes, and then he goes, "I've spoken." And then I love how after he says, "I've spoken," everybody claps.
Yeah, and Miriam's like, "Are you serious?"
Like, seriously. We find out a little bit about Miriam here, that she's a musical prodigy. And like I said, she's the only woman who can read and write in the camp. We get a little cut to her on the hill banging a tambourine and singing, apparently in a talented way. It's not very talented though. It's kind of funny though. And then so yeah, after this scene we're introduced to another character named Chisisi. And this is where you start to see them play with like the titles of the people a little bit too, which I think is fun. So I don't know if you picked up on this, but whenever they cut to an interview for this first round, when they're introducing the main cast here, they have like a little subtitle for the person. So for Chisisi, when they introduce Chisisi, it says retired Roman soldier. Or no, retired Egyptian soldier.
Egyptian.
Yeah, and it made me, or yeah, no, it says, actually, specifically, it says Egyptian soldier retired. Like it's written like that. That made me chuckle a little bit. So Chisisi is one of our main cast here. He is actually an Egyptian soldier that washed up on the wrong side of the river after the seas, on the wrong side of the sea after it crashed back in and killed all of the soldiers. He washed up on the other side. And there's a little funny scene here that I picked up on where he steals the clothes from
clothing.
He steals the clothes from a Hebrew man when he's bathing in the river, and the guy like turns around real quick, and that made me laugh. I really like Chisisi. I think he's a really good addition, a made up character, of course, but I'm like, that
he is. And I was gonna,
it makes sense though, like that. Yeah, what if somebody
the funny thing is I've been in Exodus, Leviticus, and all these different spaces. I was just listening and reading, and I came across a thing that said none of them survived.
Yeah.
So we do see what did you call it when we were doing the Passion? You're taking
a little creative liberty. Yeah.
So what they were doing here is taking a little creative liberty by adding this washed up Egyptian, but it adds a humor level.
Yeah.
And what I'm wondering here, and this is my thought, is now they have a place where they can just kind of take some liberty because there's nothing they have to necessarily follow.
Yeah.
As far as in the Word of God. So it's like, I'm taking this liberty. We're going to throw this guy in here. Not that it happened, but it's funny if it did.
Well, and this is the thing is like, I don't think it's necessarily anti-biblical either, because like it says none of them survived. Yes. But if the guy's disguising himself as a Hebrew,
so he's disguised. He was never recognized, right?
Would they know? Like,
so they're playing with this.
And we find out in Numbers that there's millions of Hebrews. Like, it's not a small group of people wandering the desert. It's
right.
It's tribes. It's a lot of people. Of course you're going to, like, I know they take the censuses and stuff, but like I'm also reading through Numbers and like they're doing the census, right? And it's these perfectly round numbers. And I'm like,
Hmm.
I know this is a census, but I have a feeling like they're not counting children or something, because it's these perfectly round numbers of people. And I'm like, I I think there's a little room to play with here, Like,
Yeah.
so you think about that and you're like, okay, so yeah, it says explicitly none of them survived, but how would they really know that? You know?
Yeah, if someone did
Like
wash
if
up, would they
somebody
disguise
wash
themselves?
yeah, if yeah,
Absolutely.
cuz they're going to get killed. Like so it's like I think the idea is funny. I think it's cute. I think they play with it perfectly, where it's like it's not blasphemous in any way. It's a playful addition. I don't think it messes with it, just
Well,
lends to the
and
comedy.
he even said in there, his thing is not that they would kill me or anything.
Yeah, yeah, like there's a joke.
Something
Yeah,
like
where he's like, I
right
don't
there.
know what would happen. Yeah, he says, I don't know what would happen if they found out if I was an Egyptian. I don't think they would kill me. And then um but so yeah, we are introduced to Chasisi, and then immediately after we're introduced to Korra, again another made up character. He's I think he's made up. Correct me if I'm
I
wrong,
don't
but
know.
I don't remember the scriptures
Can't
ever
remember.
mentioning Korra specifically by name, but he's Moses' cousin in the show. And it says here, I have it written down. It says in his little intro card, Korra, rightful leader of Israel, self-proclaimed, which I think is because he's jealous of his cousin Moses, for abandoning his people. Um,
It does show Korra.
yeah.
According to AI,
Oh, does it?
he is a cousin, yeah.
He is okay.
Yep,
That's
yep.
interesting. I thought, because I don't remember the Bible actually specifically mentioning him. Maybe I'm just not there yet. I don't know. But
Yeah,
yeah, it
trying to see where he was found, but he's in there.
yeah. What book is he found in? I'm curious about that.
It looks like Numbers, maybe?
Oh, okay. Maybe I'm not there yet then, because I'm at the beginning of Numbers right now. So
Yeah, I think you're gonna find it in Numbers.
okay, interesting.
Yep.
So yeah, Korra is introduced then. Apparently a biblical character. Didn't know that. And yeah, he's described as the rightful leader of Israel, self-proclaimed. He's jealous of Moses. I don't know if this dynamic's in the Bible, but I think it's really funny. And he's kind of on to Chasisi in this first episode. Like he knows something's not right about him. So there's a really interesting character dynamic set up there. So like throughout the episode, you see him and Chasisi kind of having these standoffs almost, which I think is really funny. Chasisi is like, he confronts Chasisi a couple times throughout the episode. And the one that really stood out to me, which made me really laugh, was when he asked Chasisi what tribe he's from, where his tent is pitched, and he goes, where's your tent pitched? And then he starts to say Levy, and then halfway through the word he goes, Levy, yes, me too. Yeah. like he's like playing it off. And earlier in the show he also asks what tribe he belongs, and he goes, aren't we all part of the same tribe?
Yeah,
Are we
that's good.
like I think it's so funny, like just the dynamic there. It's really good, really playful. And it even at one point, Korra theorizes that Chasisi, the reason there's something different about him is because he's uncircumcised, which I busted out laughing at that.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, he goes, perhaps he's uncircumcised. And then he pauses for a minute and goes, oh, like it it was so perfect, just perfect comedy. We're also introduced in this episode to Joshua, who's often misnamed as Josiah by Moses. So Joshua, he is Moses' assistant. He starts out the episode as a messenger, but throughout the episode, he gets the promotion to assistant later on. We're also introduced to Zipporah, Moses' wife. I like their kind of first interaction. It cuts to an interview with Moses, and he says that, he says, you know, we've got a lot to catch up on. Last time we saw each other, she threw my son's foreskin on my foot and called me a bridegroom of blood. So yeah, we've got a lot to catch up on. I just think the playfulness with the,
Yeah.
you know, the circumcision and just these things that we kind of see as like really weird and almost
Mm-hmm.
taboo today. I just think that like it's really, I don't think it's blasphemous to make fun of these things or make light of these things, I guess, not make fun of necessarily. We're also introduced to Jethro, his father-in-law. I think there's a great dynamic there. Throughout this
Mm-hmm.
episode, Moses wants to
Please him.
please him, and that's all he wants. And that leads to some kind of interesting. I think this is where we start to see the show actually, with the introduction of Jethro, we start to see the show actually play with Moses's identity crisis almost, like, you know, not feeling like he was the right person for the job. And I think that's really cool. So we start to get some dramatic elements there. So yeah, at that point we're introduced to all the characters throughout the show, of course. And I think there's some interesting plot points in this first episode. Like I said, I think the Jethro and Moses dynamic is a really good one. I think
Mm-hmm.
I think the Zipporah and Miriam relationship is really interesting too, because Zipporah
Yes.
shows up to
Yes.
the camp and she can do everything that Miriam can do, and so Miriam starts to get a little jealous. I think we're setting so this first episode, it's kind of like you were saying, it's a lot of setup, right? It's a lot of introducing characters. It's a lot of kind of figuring out the character dynamics, and not really knowing what the show is going to be yet. And
Yeah.
that's often what these first episodes, if not first couple episodes, are in these workplace comedies. I remember the first season of The Office was like this.
Okay.
It's actually a miracle that I got into The Office, because the entire first 5 episodes, the first season was 5 episodes long. And I remember the first season, I was like, I don't know. But there was enough there to keep me intrigued.
Okay.
And then season 2 got off the ground and ran. So
Okay.
I think this show has an advantage to where just the first episode was this kind of weird
Yeah.
figuring it out. Like there's funny stuff in there, interesting character dynamics, but none of it's really come together yet. And then it's like you said with episode 2, it kind of takes off and runs. But is there anything in episode 1 that really jumped out to you
Yeah.
that you want to discuss?
A couple things. And one is the relationship with Jethro and Moses. And that whole scene of when Zipporah and comes and you don't see Jethro immediately.
Yeah.
And Moses's response was like, to Zipporah, because he
Yeah.
hadn't seen her in so
Yeah.
long. And then it's like, oh, and she brought my father-in-law. And at first you weren't sure. I wasn't sure if it was going to be a good thing or a
Yeah.
bad thing. I'm like, oh, where are they going to take this?
Yeah, because you don't really
But then
know
this,
much about the relationship in the Bible.
yeah. And so then you see this whole introduction of this good relationship,
Yeah.
really, with
Yeah.
Jethro
I love
and
the way
Moses.
he responds when he sees Jethro the first time. He's like, Jethro! And he's like
Yeah.
running with open
And
arms. Yeah.
and this Momo thing is
Yeah.
hilarious.
Oh, the nicknames. Yeah. Momo and Zeppi.
Yeah. Zeppy, Momo.
Yeah.
But you know, as much as it makes light of it, it's how we are.
It's human.
You know,
That's how I would react if I saw a
very-
loved one. We'd have our inside jokes. We'd have our nicknames for each other. You know?
and very human and very real. Very, even though it's comedy, it's still like there's a bit of truth to it. Like, yeah, I can get that. I can see that.
Yeah.
And I really, and the whole dynamic between Momo and and Jethro was this friendship, but yet this admiration on
Yeah.
Moses and this wanting to please his father-in-law. And I
Mhm.
thought, how much of that dynamic I mean, to put the male relationship with another man that you look up to, that's
Yeah.
older, that's wiser, so to speak, and to have this dynamics, and then also the viewpoint of Jethro, like, you just tended my sheep and you're doing what?
Yeah.
You know, so all this different dynamics that they really cover a whole array, but at the same time, it's respectful.
Yeah.
And even in the seriousness of the moment of, and you sit here, and it was a comedy, but yet, and
Yeah.
when he brings him into the tent when he's doing his daily thing,
Yeah.
Jethro's like, and they pause, and it's like, you do this how many hours, and
Yeah.
you do what?
Yeah.
And he's like, this is not the way I do it.
This
And
is
how
not how I would do it.
typical
Yeah.
the typical father-in-law, son-in-law
Yeah.
relationship, that I think they did it great justice, and I think, but yet there's still a level of respect and honor,
Yeah.
but yet of this rivalry at the
Yeah.
same time.
And then
I think
playing
they
that
did really
up,
great.
I think playing up that character dynamic where like you see them at first and they have a great relationship. It seems like it's all sunshine and
Yeah,
rainbows. Moses is excited to see him to
yeah,
the point where he squeals like a little girl,
yeah,
and like goes and embraces him with open arms, and they're doing their little like dance, their secret handshake or whatever. Like I thought it was
yeah,
really funny. And then Moses is showing him the day to day, and then you start to see this judgment towards Moses almost as
yeah.
how it comes off, and
Like,
Moses
oh,
is
he
like
needs help. Yeah,
getting frustrated because all he
yeah,
wants to do is please Jethro.
yeah.
And I think there's also an underlying theme there where it's like when we focus on what others think about us, we start to have identity crises. But when we
That's
focus
good.
on
Yeah,
what God thinks about us, we're all
yeah.
good. And you see this
We're
play
all
into
good.
episode 2 as well. And so I think you can glean a lot out of just this little character interaction between Jethro and Moses, and then it plays on the surface level for comedy, and I think it works
Yeah,
really well on multiple levels. I think it's very deep actually for a comedy show.
yeah. It
Um,
is. It makes you think. It
yeah,
it really does. It stirs this this thing inside of that says, this is how I typically be, and I want to do better.
yeah,
I want to, how would I respond this way, and how would I, or should I respond? And I
mm,
think we see that a similar, not same, but similar dynamic between Miriam and Zipporah,
yeah,
where this is a typical thing in relationships with women. We love them so much and we accept them, but at the same time, it's like we get this jealousy, and can this one, but we never admit to it. We don't
yeah,
admit to this thing, but just the dynamics of the woman's relationship with each other.
mm,
They hit it, they nailed it
yeah,
between Zipporah and Miriam. And so it's going to be really fun, I think, to see how they develop this relationship
mm,
with the similarities. um it's almost like the desire of Miriam is being played out right in front of her, and she's like, wait, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. I don't want to take care of all these women. I want to be the song. I want to be the songstress, the
yeah,
psalmist, you know and so we see this, wait, 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 and we it's so I think it's going to be really cool to see how this relationship develops in time. So those are the two things I think that really stood out to me, is
yeah,
the initial interactions with each other in these two relationships. I think those to me are going to be probably the features
mm,
in the next few episodes. At least it's going to be the focuses.
yeah. And
Although
then
Jethro is hard in the second episode, we see him going away, don't we? Or was
he
that in the
goes away
first?
at the end of the first episode. He kind of
Okay.
sends Moses off with like a heartfelt message, which I thought that was a really cool touch. Like you see, that's what I love about these comedies that are character focused, is there are moments of heart and
Hmm.
depth, and you see that
Yeah.
at the end of this episode when it all culminates.
Yeah.
And thematically, the episode's on point and very focused with the character dynamic of. So you see the same character dynamic of relationship with Zipporah and Miriam, and then you see the same character dynamic that Moses and Jethro are dealing with, and then it all culminates into this very heartfelt speech that um, Jethro gives Moses at the end, where he's essentially saying, um, and this is also after it kind of culminates into a heated moment where in the tent Jethro kind of takes charge, and then
Mhm.
he puts Aaron in charge of the day to day.
Yeah. Well, and
And
then we see Aaron.
and
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
Aaron's happy, and then Moses is like, what just happened? And and then it all culminates, they're on a hill, and Jethro is confronting Moses about what happened, explaining to him what happened,
Hmm.
why he did it, and explaining to him that he's done well, and he's paying off, like the payoff moment of, this is everything I think about you. And I think,
Yeah.
and I gave Aaron the day-to-day duties because you are meant for greater. You are supposed to be doing greater things. You are the communication point between God and the people. You are, he's telling him this. And I even thought there was a really nice touch. I don't know if this was intentional or if this was the actor actually getting teared up, but I don't know if you noticed, but Jethro's actor, like, he actually was like crying during this moment. Like, there was a tear.
I didn't notice that.
There was a tear falling down his face. And I was like, I started kind of getting a little emotional during the speech.
I did find myself getting a little emotional, but I didn't see that. Maybe I didn't notice it because I was,
but I was like, that's either really good acting or this guy's just old and he's emitting fluids. I don't know what's going on. But you know how old people be, they're just tearing up randomly and stuff.
What?
But yeah, I thought it culminated. So even though it might have had a slow start, we're still figuring things out. I thought it culminated to a good head and good point in the first episode. And then, of course, Cora and Tracisi just being absolute clowns by the end of the episode. Just like, they're actually, like, Cora's actually actively chasing Tracisi up a hill and throwing his staff at him. And funny. It's a sand hill, so they're both kind of losing their footing. And I was like, that's so good. It's so funny. And then, of course, we also find out at the very end. So the episode caps off with Joshua / Josiah thanking Jethro for the promotion, and then Moses is like,
and
what?
They all look at him
what?
Like, what?
And then he's like, yeah, he made me your assistant. And then we have a very deliberate I would say homage to The Office here, where you probably wouldn't know, Mom, but this is very much a Dwight Michael Scott dynamic of it throughout The Office. Dwight is the assistant to the regional manager, wants to be assistant manager, and then he also wants to eventually become the manager. Whereas you see a little bit of a hint towards that. I would call it an homage. I thought it was very well done, where it cuts to a interview with Joshua where he says, I'm very excited for my new position. And he's like, maybe I could even be leader one day. And then Moses comes in and he's like, these interviews aren't for you. We have work to do. Come on. And it was just a very Office coded moment of, clearly this is the Dwight Michael dynamic between these two characters. I thought it was very well done. I thought it was very cool as an Office fan to kind of see that dynamic. I didn't think at first I was like, is this copying? And then I'm like, no, I don't think it's like copying the homework. I think it's, you clearly were inspired by a show. And then also you have biblical basis too, because Joshua eventually becomes leader of Israel.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I think it's
so it was necessary.
It was necessary, exactly. And then so the episode kind of caps off with Moses is in an interview, and it's kind of overlaid with them walking off into the sunset into episode 2 towards Mount Sinai. And Moses is like, it takes, I love the quote here. He says, it takes 2 hands to make a triangle, but it takes many hands to build a pyramid. And then he says, that's a direct quote from Pharaoh. He's like, maybe not the best leadership example, but you have to admit, he got things done. I thought it was a really fun note to end the episode on. So that's episode 1. Any final thoughts on episode 1 before we jump into episode 2?
No, I tell you what, the looking back and the evaluating it or just talking about it, actually, I think it was more deliberate than I realize.
Mm-hmm. On the surface, it seems like a silly comedy show, but when you actually dive deep, and I think that's what's lost on a lot of people with The Office too. I'm not saying The Office has as much depth because it's not based on truth, but The Office has something that's the special sauce of The Office that a lot of people miss. And I think this show has it as well, where because it's character driven and there's truth to how the characters interact with each other and finding the comedy in the character interaction, but also the depth of character that is in each
Yeah,
character in The Office is what gives it its secret sauce. And I think this show has it as well. Is these are relatable characters, and
yeah,
the
for
way
sure.
they interact with each other, it's the show just highlights the comedy and the interaction between the characters.
I'll say this too before we go into the second episode. I'll say this: I don't think they pushed the envelope as far as their audience. What meaning that I
Yeah,
don't think they crossed a line, anything that made it too adult for younger viewers.
right.
I mean,
Yeah,
there was a couple things we see, but they're all reality, and they're not like
everything in here was biblical. I feel
yeah.
like,
So
yeah,
it's like it's kind of like we've talked about in the past. This is the reality of the scripture, and when we train our children up, part of it is teaching them all the truth and not just
yeah,
give them parts of the stories. I think as they can handle it, and I think this is a probably a introduction to a story that is something that our children need to hear, but they probably need to hear more than we teach them, and maybe not,
yeah,
at different levels of their of their life and at different stages of maturity. But I don't see in this so far anything that is like inappropriate
yeah. Like
for family.
you can cringe at the line of him saying, we haven't seen each other since she cut off my firstborn's foreskin and threw it on my foot and called me a bridegroom of blood. Like, you can cringe at that all you want, but that's in the Bible. Like,
It
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 happened.
it it is, and it may or may not, depending on the
Yeah.
age of the family member, it may or may not strike some conversation or um,
I
trigger
would
some
I
questions.
would
But
say
if it
that line
triggers the
is
question,
I would say that line, like, how many first off, you're probably not watching this if you're under the age of 13, 14
no,
anyway. And even if you are, that line, like, I don't know anybody under the age of 10 that understands what a foreskin is. So,
no, and they're not going to get it.
you know,
So if they do get it, then it's at an age where I think, okay, if they caught that, if they got it, then it's something that can be talked about,
yeah, we can talk about that. You've
and
already had
and we
sex ed.
can.
We can talk about this stuff.
Yeah, which I mean, we're already starting. I mean, considering Evie next year is going to be faced with all this stuff, we know what the curriculum is
Yeah.
going to be. It's like, so that's 7 years old, my friends.
Yeah.
So if we don't get comfortable with some of these conversations, the only one that's not going to be talking about this stuff with your kids is you.
Yeah. And that's the reality that we have to deal with.
So, anyways, back
Before
to
we
a
get
lighter
off track,
subject.
yeah. So, episode 2, I think this is where the show finds its footing. I think this is where the show starts to kind of take off and into a full sprint. Um, it trying to remember what all happens in this episode. I didn't take as thorough of notes for episode 2. So episode 2, they're at Mount Sinai, and it opens with Moses saying, "As you can see, I've already spoken to the Lord today," and it like shows him glowing with the glory of God,
Yeah,
which I thought was a
yeah,
really fun touch. Um, and it cuts to him reading off some of the rules. Oh, and this
consecration. They got to
also
consecrate
also
themselves.
at the end of the last episode, I thought it was funny. I forgot to say this line. There was a line at the end of the last episode when they're about to walk off into the sunset. Joshua says to Moses, "Will there be many rules?" And then Moses is like, probably just a handful." Which I thought was a hilarious line, obvious foreshadowing
Yeah.
to what's about to come. So he's at the bottom of the mountain and he says, "We have to consecrate ourselves over the next few days." And he's telling them what that all entails. They have to wash their garments. And then no sex, of course. Don't
Yeah.
even go near a woman. He says, I love how he says, he's like, "No sex. I know. Don't even go near a woman." Like, it made me laugh. So after he tells them about the consecration process, I also love that you start to see a little bit of the pushback from the people too, because he opens the speech with, "I have delivered you on eagle's wings," and then they're like, I don't remember any eagle's wings. My feet are killing me. Like you start to see the
Yeah.
pushback from the people a little bit. So I thought that was a nice
Yeah.
touch. And this is where Aaron also gets to like full stride be the Aaron that I picture him in the Bible, where he's like, he's being the spokesperson. He's a well-spoken one, right? So he's cracking jokes with the crowd, and he's like, he's like, everybody repeat after me. What the Lord says, we will do. And then they all repeat, and he's got the crowd. He's like being a hype man for the crowd. He's getting them all riled up and ready to go.
Yeah.
For this mundane task of consecrating yourselves. And like it's a really fun dynamic to see Aaron kind of being, again, shout out to the show, because it's the most biblically accurate in that Aaron's actually a vital role to this, which
And good with the people.
Yeah, and good with the people. And it cuts to an interview with him too, which I thought was really funny, where he says, he's like, when I had to speak back for Moses in Egypt, I did pretty well. Except for the plagues, of course. So I thought it was fun seeing a little bit more of Aaron in this episode doing his thing. Good dynamic. Also in the last episode, Moses appointed Miriam as the leader of the women, and she starts to take up that role. And I thought it was a really funny joke where she's trying to set up this women's hour for women to air their grievances. And when she goes up to the crowd to speak and announce the women's hour, everybody just kind of tunes out and starts chatting in the crowd. I'm like, it's so good. Like, just again, highlighting kind of the culture at the time, and they're just kind of disrespect towards women, but doing it in kind of a funny way, I thought was really good. All the women are like trying to listen in, but they can't hear over. And then she speaks up, and then Korah turns and he's like, so shrill. I thought that's really good. We also see Moses assigning leaders to different tribes of men to train them and teach them. And so you see Moses, this episode focuses on Moses basically delegating the duties to everybody as well. And you see a little bit more of Korah's jealousy when he's assigned 10 men, and then everybody else is getting assigned like 20 or 50 or 100 or 1,000. And one of the jokes I really liked here was when Shem gets assigned 50 men and Korah got assigned 10, and he's like, Shem got 50. He's like, stupid idiot. Just a dumb, stupid face. Like, he just resorts to elementary school insults, which I thought was so funny.
I was reading, Tim. They when I looked up about Korah.
Yeah.
They're really playing into who Korah was.
Okay.
Because I was reading a little bit, and I'm like, oh, and there was this discontentment in Korah.
Okay.
And you'll probably, because you don't all these years, I vaguely remembered the name Korah, so I knew that he was a character.
Yeah.
That he was one of the people, but I didn't really ever pay attention to who he was in the story.
Okay.
And I'm not going to do a spoiler to you. So I'm not going to tell you what I just read, but they're really leading up to a climax here with Korah.
Okay.
So, yeah. So what we're going to see is this probably play out in the next couple episodes or few episodes.
Okay.
His character. So, yeah, so it's kind of interesting. It brings a whole nother reading what I just read about Korah in this story, in this part of history. I'm like, oh,
okay,
yeah, that's
okay,
really going to build this storyline. Yeah,
I'm excited to run into him in numbers. I haven't gotten that far in numbers yet, but yeah. So I and again, so when Korah is assigned his group of 10 men, and he finally finds them, one guy moves out of the way, and Chasisi's in his group, and he's like, and then Chasisi's just happy. He's like, Korah, you're in this group too? And he's like, group buddies. Like, so really love that. And so Korah throughout the episode has this drive to make his group of 10 the best group of men out of all the tribes. So he's throughout the episode pushing them really hard. Um, and also, so the other dynamic you see throughout the episode as well is Moses is got free time on his hands for the first time in a long time. So he's trying to figure out how to spend it. One point you see him relaxing under a tree really awkwardly. And some people walk by and he goes, going to do some laundry, eh? All right. And like, and then he runs into a group of kids. I thought this was a really fun scene. The soccer scene.
Yeah.
They're playing some form of, soccer from back then. And it gets to the point where he basically ruins the fun for all the kids because he keeps calling them out for cheating and stuff. And then by the end of the game, they're just miserable.
And they're just standing there.
They're just standing there, and he's like scoring free goals and stuff. And I thought that was a fun dynamic. Yeah, there's a lot of fun places of conversation we can take this one. Where are there any places you want to take it, Mom? Anything in this episode that stood out to you?
I thought it was really great when, and this is just a real looking at this from a very human viewpoint, and the whole him trying to find things to do, occupy his time. His whole identity was in that tent, dealing with those issues. As much as he hated it, as much as he couldn't stand it, and it just drove him mad at certain times. And now all of a sudden he's got all this free time. He doesn't have anything to do. And so he goes home and he like throws himself down, and his wife's there, Zipporah's there, and she's like, "What, Moses?" Basically, Momo, what's going on?
What's going on?
I mean, you could just see this dynamics, and then so he throws himself at the sand, and then as she comes over, and there's just so many cool moments, and part of their conversation, she's like, "Too bad." This might have been even a different scene, or I don't know if it was the same scene, but it's like, it's too bad you're consecrating, Moses. Like we could have something to do.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really great. And he's like, "Stay away from."
And then he goes, he's like, "No, that's not funny. No. That's not good." And then she hands him the bag of laundry at the end of the scene, which made me, yeah. Well, then you can go scrub the clothes. Really, yeah.
It was really, really good. Just that search for, what am I going to do now? What am I? This wasn't my identity. My identity, and this is maybe a spiritual thing. Maybe I'm going a little too deep here, but
I don't think you are.
Moses misplaced his identity in dealing with the people and being their earthly savior, not their God, but like, I am the rescuer. I'm the one who's got to solve all this. He was placing and had placed. Remember, his wife at that moment in the beginning wasn't with him. And so all of a sudden, this is his whole life. And suddenly reality hits, and he's like, and he realizes that, okay, I got to align myself. I got to figure out this. Now I got to figure out who I am.
Yeah.
I'm not, the people aren't me. I'm not the people. There is life beyond that. And so now what do I do? And to go spend time with his wife, it might have been even a little awkward after all that time away, and I love the fact, and this is something I noticed throughout, he's got sons, but we still haven't seen the sons.
Yeah, that's a running joke actually throughout the first episode.
This is the running joke.
Yeah.
Where are the boys?
Where are the boys? Ah, they must have run right past me. Yeah.
So humorous. So humorous. And it's like, are we ever going to see? So it has you curious to wonder if we're ever going to see the boys, or if throughout this whole season
that'd be funny. That'd be funny if it was just a running joke throughout the show, even like, oh, they must have run right past me.
And that's kind of what I'm wondering if they're doing with that. And I love the fact that when after a while we find Moses there, and he's being buried in the sand by Zipporah.
Yeah.
And they were just basically having fun, just relaxing, enjoying life.
Yeah.
And then Miriam and
Aaron so preface
to him and like what in the world?
Yeah, preface throughout the episode, Miriam and Aaron are kind of dealing with their new leadership roles as well.
Yes.
Miriam's trying to figure out how to break through to the women, because there's this awkward dynamic when during the women's hour they'd go into the tent, but the men are still sitting in back for some reason, just hanging out. And so like there's the first woman during the woman's hour to air her grievances. She goes up and she feels awkward like with the men standing behind her, and she doesn't want to say anything. And it even goes as far as to like one of the men sitting behind her, and he's like, good woman, can you fill this water bottle for me? Yeah. And then she's like,
and Miriam's like, no, that's not why we're
that's
here.
not why we're here. Miriam's got the boldness to say like stand up to the men. And then she's like,
oh, Miriam's bold, all right.
She's feeling really awkward. And then she's like, never mind, I can fill that water for you now. And she runs away. And then the second woman to come in is like, so it is my time of bleeding. And then all the men are like, oh God. So it's like Miriam's trying to figure out how to break through with this woman's hour thing and break through to the women, and she eventually finds the best way to do that is like meet them where they're at when they're doing laundry or whatever, and just kind of gossip.
That was cool.
It's almost like the invention of gossip. It was kind of funny. And then Aaron's also dealing with kind of figuring out his role too. Like he's figuring out that like, oh, I can't always be a friend to the people because then they just seem like, so he's figuring that out. So they're dealing with their different dynamics, and then it all culminates to them coming to Moses at his home, and they walk in on the scene of him just like goofing off, and Zipporah's burying him in the sand, and it's just his head and his feet sticking out of the sand, and it's really funny.
And then he pops up.
And then he pops up, and he realizes that this is his role to kind of help guide the other leaders of the camp. And it even also culminates in Korah, after the whole episode trying to get through to his men and train them to be the best they can be. He's disappointed in them, and he also comes to Moses at his home, and he's complaining, and right before he starts to complain, Moses says to him, Korah, your team has been the best out of all the other groups, so go build a tent for the women. This guy can give you supplies, and I think you guys can get it done. And then he's like, oh, okay, it will be done. And then as he's walking away, he's like, see, good leadership is recognizing good abilities in people even when it can't be seen by most people. And then Korah's like, what'd you say about me? Like, so it all kind of, I really like how these episodes seem to have a cadence of, having the A plot, the B plot, maybe even a C plot, but being able to tie it all together at the end and have kind of this heartfelt moment. And I think it's worked for the first couple episodes. And then after the heartfelt moment, of course, things are not all well and good, because the Lord's mad. He's at the top of the mountain storming. And there's a funny scene here where Korah says, well, we failed the consecration, and clearly the Lord is going to smite us down. So stand strong, men. And then Chasisi points out to Korah, well, we did everything we were supposed to, so isn't this everyone else's fault? And then Korah's like, you know what? It is. And then they all like stand with the whole group of 10 stands with their arms crossed, and they start going, to everybody running by and panicking. And they're like laughing at everybody else. I thought that was such a good joke. Great.
I did too.
So everybody's freaking out, trying to get up on the mountain to beg for mercy from the Lord or whatever. Joshua, oh yeah, I forgot about Joshua throughout this whole episode. He gets tasked by Moses to guard the whole mountain. And
takes it so seriously.
And takes it so seriously to the point where he's neglecting his sleep. Some kids lose a ball on the mountain, and he's like, no, stay back or I have to kill you. Like, he has a standoff with a goat, which I thought was hilarious.
Yeah.
And then when
the goat won.
And then when Joshua eventually gets like kind of beat up by the group of kids so they can get their ball. And then the goat goes by when he's down. But we're introduced to Caleb. Is Caleb a biblical figure as well?
Yes.
Okay. I thought so. I just can't place him. But we're introduced to Caleb, and he kind of makes nice with Joshua by the end. He's one of the group of teenagers that loses the ball. But he comes back and says, my friends had no right to kind of wail on you and be as mean as they
Yeah.
were. We just wanted the ball back. Gives him his bow back. And Joshua suggests that he needs better friends, and he's like, "Yeah, maybe, but not you." like, So, yeah, I completely forgot about Joshua's whole subplot
Yep.
in this show too. So
There's a lot in there.
yeah, there's a
There's
lot. They packed a lot
so
into episode 2. And
packed a lot.
then so the Lord's upset, angry, and everyone's trying to see what's going on the mountain. Joshua's trying to hold everybody back. And then Moses kind of comes through and the crowd calms down. And Moses has this moment where he says, "Is that you, Lord?" And then you hear a horn. And then he says, can I come up and talk to you? And then you hear another horn, and everybody kind of gives Moses kind of the nod of approval. Moses starts the trek up the mountain. And that's where
Yeah.
the episode kind of ends. So we start to see a little serious tone shift here at the end, and I'm curious how they're going to balance that with the comedy in the coming episodes, especially because we know what's coming in the episodes if we're read up on our Bible. So, any more thoughts on this episode 2, Mom,
I
that you
I
wanted to
do
go
because
before we go?
as we're talking, I would say this. I think even though it's comedic and it is a comedy, I think there is an undercurrent of very um taking it seriously,
Yeah,
even though it doesn't come across because they're hitting on these very needed points. So it's almost teaching.
it's teaching.
Um
It's found a really good, unique balance of
yeah,
teaching and
because when it needs to be serious, it
yeah,
takes that twist of just serious for a moment, enough to get its point across, and then it jumps to the
yeah,
so I think there is principles, godly principles, there's teaching that's taking place. You're learning about the story and the things that are happening, but at the same and you're learning how these things actually relate in life today. So
yeah,
I think this is doing a really the more you think about it, and be honest with you, every time I think about it and the more we talk about it, the more I find in it that it's a very positive
yeah,
thing, a very positive influence. So
yeah.
I absolutely am in because I think throughout this, no matter how it goes, it's probably going to be a excellent tool to get to know God better, to get to know relationships with people better and how to deal with them, the humanity of the matter, how we can
Yeah.
relate to. I think there's just so many aspects
I
that are
think
going to
that's
be
what this show is going
good
to
in
do
this.
very well and be very effective in, is showing the human side. I think it's going to help portray God's character, Old Testament God character,
Yeah.
because often people are like, the God of the Old Testament and the God of the New Testament are two completely different people, two completely different characters.
Mm.
And in reality, if you're really looking at the through line throughout the Bible, it's not a different character. If anything, it's just, not saying God has changed, but it's almost like God's heart towards his creation has softened over time to the point where he wants to give us a way out. And you
Mm.
see that throughout the Old Testament, is he's constantly trying to give us the answers and give us a way out. But we, in our stupidity and ignorance, think we know better than God. And I think that's what this show is going to do well, is paint the human side and paint God's Old Testament God's character in the right light. And I think it's going to help
Yeah.
us understand a little bit better. So
I
I'm
think it's
really
the
enjoying the
blending.
show. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's the blending because here's the thing. I think, and maybe this is a way to cap it off. You look at Genesis
Mm.
and the first in the fall of man, and immediately we see God's heart because right away he promises the provision
Mm.
to cover all the sins of mankind between Genesis and the Gospels.
Yeah.
So the heart has always been there, the provision's always been there, but it's seeing them through all their mess and all our
Yeah.
failures, all the sin, all the rebellion, all the continuous
Exactly.
falling prey to our flesh. But yet the heart has never changed since
Yep.
Genesis to redeem mankind. And that's how we can bring the relating factor from the gospel, from the cross of Jesus Christ, all the way back to that part of the part of God the Father, God the Creator in Genesis.
Yeah.
So it goes from God the Creator, God the Father, to God the Son,
Yep.
God the Redeemer. And I
Mhm.
think that's the beauty of this. And this particular the Promised Land is going to show that well and help blend. It's almost like the midway blend to me
Yeah.
between the two cultures.
Yeah.
I think it's really cool.
I think it's going to speak to our modern culture too.
Yeah.
I think it's going to speak to an entire generation that loves shows like The Office and Parks and Rec.
Hmm.
I think it's going to be a good tool. So
Yeah.
far, excellent show. I think it's doing its job miraculously. And I'm excited to see where it goes. I'm excited to sit down and watch episode 3 today. And then probably
Yeah.
rewatch it to make sure that I have it cemented in my head for our next episode. So thank you for watching. My name is Tim, as always, and I'm joined by Christy. And we thank you. Like, subscribe, comment, and join us next time here on All
Yeah.
Perspective.
Check out the Promised Land.
Check out The Promised Land. Yeah, for sure. If you
Yeah.
haven't, if you weren't convinced, I hope this podcast convinced you to at least give it a try. It might not be for you. It might not be your comedy style, but
It wasn't mine.
it's converted Mom a little bit. She's figuring it out. So
Just because we don't like something doesn't mean we can't learn from something.
Exactly. Ooh, that's deep.
Ooh, it is deep.
All right. Well, everybody, have a good day.